Having a clue is overrated. There's this funny myth that people actually know what they're doing. I've spent time around some of the richest, smartest, highest status people on the planet, and let me tell you, it's idiots all the way up. Normalize saying, I don't have a clue. I'm going to work out how to do it anyway. Having a clue is overrated.
One of my green flags for intellect is someone being able to say that they don't know. Like, it's almost inverted at this point, because I think at some point during school, if a teacher calls on you and you say you don't know, you're punished for that. And so we have such a repetitive cycle of both having it happen to us and watching people like us have a punishing experience that it's very, very hardcore taught to us to never say that we don't know. But that most basic lie trains us over and over again to never say what we actually think. And if we don't know, then that may be one of the easiest ways to start telling the truth.
It's kind of the same as the, if I can't trust your no, I can't trust your yes.
I love it, yeah.
It's the exact same energy.
Not knowing is really powerful, because then learning becomes the only clear directive. And so if we know what learning is, which is same condition, new behavior, then it's like, what do I need to change about what I do in order to learn this thing? It also allows us to say many things are not worth learning because they probably won't affect my life in any way.
Well, think how much you pity the person who, like, it is literally the worst. If you imagine a quadrant of knowing and not knowing and thinking you know and thinking you don't know,
Right.
The worst quadrant to be in is thinking you know whilst not knowing, right? And that is every single person who isn't prepared to say, I don't know,
Yeah.
and internally doesn't believe it. I've already got the answer for that. You know, they are unable to transition across into white belt or beginner mentality. They're always in the, yeah, I know about that.
I think Mark Twain said, it's not the things we know that kill us, but the things that we think we know, but just ain't so.
A lot of self-work can be summarized into thoughts aren't true, feelings don't require actions, things aren't good or bad, they just are. Our greatest enemy is ignorance. To change your life, change your surroundings. Our actions, not our pasts, define who we are. I think that's probably 95% of self-work.
I stand by my statement.
Thoughts aren't true, feelings don't require action, things aren't good or bad, they just are. Our greatest enemy is ignorance. To change your life, change your surroundings. Our actions, not our pasts, define who we are.
Man, I could unpack all of those. So let's start with ignorance. So I am not a moralist, but if I were a moralist, then I would say that ignorance is the only evil, and therefore knowledge is the only good. And so most atrocities, if we define them that way, that humans inflict on one another comes from ignorance. We don't know something about the other person or the other party. And if we had absolute context on why someone does what they do, if we lived their life, then we would have absolute knowledge on it, and then we would be them. And so then we probably wouldn't try to hurt them because we would be them. And so I see the pursuit of knowledge and its corollary, how I like it, the pursuit of learning, changing our behavior, to be my ultimate purpose in life. Because if I think about myself as going through life, then I want to learn as much as I can, which is changing my behavior, ideally suited to the direction that I want to go in. As for if you want to change your life, change your surroundings. If we want to behave a certain way, then we want to increase the likelihood that a behavior occurs. And so B.F. Skinner said this, and I just love this. It's like my most savage quote of his. He says, people say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. False. He said, if I dehydrate the horse, I salt its mouth, I put it in the heat, and I put its face 1 inch away from water, I can veritably guarantee that it will drink. And I think about that visual all the time when I think about myself as the horse. And I think to myself, what is the behavior that I want? Drinking water. And what is the salt in my mouth? And what is the dehydration, the motivation for this behavior that I can create? And so I am not a believer in free will. I believe that we respond to the conditions that we've had, and then we learn behaviors as a result of those things. And so, for example, I could get everyone in here, the entire crew, to get naked. Guarantee you, I could do it. All I would do is I'd just crank up the temperature and I'd wait. And eventually, everyone would get naked. It would happen. And so everyone has this idea that they have this free will. But that's what would happen eventually. Yeah. And so if that's true, then we have significantly less control and at the same time more control over our behavior if we can stack the deck in our favor. And so part of the reason going to bed at 9 p.m. is so powerful is because we're changing the conditions so that we can change our behavior. If all of your friends are poor, Harvard did that long study and said that the number one correlate was your reference group, which is who you compare yourself to. Also note, not who you spend the most time with, it's who you compare yourself to. And so if you want to change your life, change who you compare yourself to, number one. But part of who you compare yourself to is who you spend your time with, or who at least you consume the most of. So if you're doing this, then maybe that's a good thing, or maybe it's a terrible thing because you're comparing the wrong people. But either way, if you want to get fit, if you get around fitter people, you will be deprived of fitness because you'll be the least in shape person. And then all of a sudden you'll be more motivated. If you are poor, but you're the richest of your friends or the same level of wealth as your friends, then get around people who make more money. And then of course people say, but I can't get around people who make more money. Okay. No one else has ever done it. No one who has had it worse than you has ever figured out how to do it. You're right. Right. Of course you're not right. So shut the fuck up.
Where should people go? Do you want to keep up to date with what you've got going on? Or what have you got any cool stuff coming up?
If you're a beginner, just learning, figuring out how to make your first dollar, I'm a co-owner of Skool.com, Skool.com. You can start for free. It's a cool setup that we have to help people do it. And right now, 54.1% of people who start a paid community on Skool make money. So we have put a tremendous amount of effort, Sam and I, into trying to remove all barriers and all friction for people who are getting started so that they have literally no excuses.
It's a way better strike rate than OnlyFans.
I don't know what their strike rate is, but we've worked really hard to. If you saw the amount of detail, I mean, maybe you heard some of this from the podcast, but the amount of detail that went into like where buttons go and what things we remove was actually a big one. Was how can we so pare this down so that people don't get overwhelmed? Because the number one reason people cancel or decide not to do something is overwhelm. And so we're like, okay, how can we funnel action into the clearest possible steps that people go step 1, step 2, step 3, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, this actually worked. And so it's been really cool to see the thousands of people who have made their first dollar, which is what I make all my content about it to begin with. And so it's been the ride of my life. It's